It's my pleasure to welcome Ryan Federo, lecturer at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and Ruth Aguilera, Brodsky Trustee Professor of Global Business at Tamor McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, and visiting professor at ESADE Business School, Universitat Ramon, Llull in Barcelona. Ryan and Ruth's paper was recently published in Human Resources Management. The paper title is How Does the Visibility of LGBTQ plus Directors Influence Firm Value? The Mediating Role of Environmental, Social, and Governance Performance. Ryan and Ruth, welcome to the interview with me with HRM.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jelena. Happy to be here.
Why is your study important? What's the problem that led you to research this?
Jelena, thank you for asking that question because I think for us it's more about trying to understand the importance of having having visible LGBTQ plus directors on firms. So as we are already aware the recent events that there is a growing backlash against DEI, especially in fact this has been happening the past few months already, and as you've seen in the news, where large prominent firms and even public agencies have scaled back on their DEI programs, which include, of course, LGBTQ plus, who are part of those underrepresented groups. And of course, when we talk about board diversity, we're looking into different representation of individuals who are coming from these underrepresented groups, such as when we talk about race, ethnicity, being a female. And one of the things that we've noticed is that we are missing one part of the equation, which is the LGBTQ plus community. So we thought that it would be interesting to see how would be the influence of the presence of these people in the boards would affect firms out there. So that's basically where we're coming from here, and we thought that we don't actually we have not paid attention much on this aspect of board diversity, and maybe it's about time for us to look into that. And so in this case, it has led us to examine what are the firm outcomes of specifically having visible LGBTQ plus directors. Why only the visibility? Well, because of course and this is one of those characteristics of individuals that are invisible. It means that you can actually strategically disclose it or even hide it, and because of that, we thought that it is more feasible for us just to capture the visibility rather than the presence of these individuals in general. And we're looking into how would that actually influence firms. And we picked up the largest firms out there, which are the Fortune 500 firms. They're often in the spotlight, and they're often being looked at by various stakeholders out there. So we thought that maybe it's about time for us to study this topic.
So we have analyzed the largest firms. They are the Fortune 500 firms that have visible LGBTQ plus directors sitting on the board. So it's kind of a conservative measure because obviously not all the individuals that sit on the board disclose these traits. So it's a conservative measure, and we have studied how these directors, the presence of these directors in these very large US firms is associated with performance measure, which is higher enterprise value. And higher enterprise value is basically the value that you would assign to a firm if the firm was going on sale, if the firm were going to be taken over or acquired by another firm. So what we find, so the major finding is that there is a positive relationship attributed to ESG performance, particularly driven by corporate social performance, that comprises environmental and social aspects. So we find like that there is a direct relationship on this diversity issue. And what is really important is that this is kind of this trait, this demographic trait, is an invisible one. And Ryan, correct me if it's not called demographic, but this individual traits tends to be an invisible one, as opposed to gender, and as opposed to gender defined as female, and as opposed to race, which usually is more visible. So the LGBTQ plus, it's kind of an invisible trait, like maybe it would be like mental health issues or other invisible diversity issues. So basically, in a nutshell, what we find is that there is a direct relationship between having LGBTQ directors in these large firms and their enterprise value, their performance, which is we attribute it to having better ESG. So that's one of the mechanisms.
Why does that matter theoretically?
So we'll divide this question in two parts. So maybe Ryan, you take the second part. But okay. Theoretically, for me, like theoretically, is that there are a lot of papers, and we know quite a bit about diversity in boards from the point of view of gender. So there's a lot of research, especially since this gender quota on boards was passed, that require 40% women on boards of large companies. So, and especially after the Me Too movement. So there is a lot of research on diversity on boards, actually all over the world. And there's also some research on race on boards. So what we wanted to do is basically use some of these theories and apply it to studying LGBT board members, LGBT plus board members, and see if those theories, those theoretical arguments about having heterogeneous board with different points of view, to avoid group thinking, to avoid having like a dominant voice, and having more of a diverse thought would positively impact the measurement of stakeholders, the measurement of outside investors in terms of their performance. So I'm gonna turn it to Ryan to expand from there. We basically unfold or unpack the mechanisms that show this positive relationship between this diversity and firm performance.
Thanks, Ruth, for that. It's true. These mechanisms, we actually show it through a conceptual framework that we actually propose in this paper, in which that we demonstrate the mediating effect of the ESG for them to be able to reach into to higher enterprise value. So where are we coming from here, and how do we contribute to theory here? First and foremost is that we actually provide an explanation why this happens. So what we try to do is that there is as what Ruth has already mentioned before, that there is a huge literature about talking about that if you have diverse boards, you get more resources that can be used for better decision making at the board level. So in this case, we do actually agree with this one and actually draw on this assumption. But then again, we push it further and argue that it's not only about those resource-based explanations, but there's also a signaling tool for us as if we have these LGBTQ plus directors in the boardroom. Why? Because in many cases, external stakeholders, they do not have complete information about how firms operate, on what are the ideals and and what do they care about in these firms. But then again, if you have these types of of individuals in the organization, especially at the top of the organizations, then it can really reflect that they do care about, as an organization as a whole, about these issues in organizations. So in our argument, if you have these visible LGBTQ plus directors out there, then they do care more about the diversity, equity, and inclusion within the organization. And this actually can be reflected specifically with the ESG performance that they do. And in fact, we actually demonstrate that, and we find empirical findings to show that one. And apart from that, of course, we also push further the boundaries of the relationship between diversity and firm performance, in which that we unpack this mechanism. That's what Ruth had already mentioned, that ESG, specifically corporate social performance, would be the one driving these relationships. So that's basically our main theoretical contributions in this paper.
Great. And the final question, what do your results mean for HR policy or the practice of HR?
So we are very interested in really having a strong policy implications, HR policy implications. And I would say there are a few. One of them is that when boards do a skills matrix assessment, basically what they do is that they try to evaluate, okay, we need new directors, the company is growing, the products are diversifying, the service are also changing. So the boards tend to do it's called a skills matrix assessment to decide which kind of directors should be appointed to the board next. So I think our paper provides a business case, maybe for some of those more hesitant, traditional, white, male, and pale board members, to really convince them that having this diverse board will bring higher performance. So this is really like the business case. Like, it's a very instrumental from a point of view to demonstrate that in addition to gender diversity, race diversity, there are other diversities, and there are others, but we are focusing on this one. This is point number one. Point number two is that we haven't studied that, but there's also research, and this is an important HRM implication, is that there are definitely spillover effects. If at the apex of the organization, at the board level, you have individuals who have disclosed and are very proud of their LGBT plus traits, that will also allow other members, it will have a spillover effect in the top management team, in employees, to have respect for these individuals, to empower them, and to feel more comfortable within the organization if they have a role model at that high level. So these are at least two of them, and then I'll turn it to Ryan.
So awesome. So thanks, Ruth, for that. Just to add to that skill set that Ruth mentioned, and specifically about the business case of having LGBTQ plus directors, I would also say that it's not only a business case, but it's also a moral imperative for organizations, because of course it is the responsibility of firms to provide the opportunity for all types of individuals to be representative on the top of organizations. So having said that, that idea is that for HR policies, it is about time for organizations to establish and implement these types of policies that will facilitate in lowering the barriers for the LGBTQ plus community to reach the top of organizations. So Ruth already mentioned, because it's good for the firm, there's a business case about it. But then again, also providing them the opportunity can actually be only good for not only for the firm, but also it's good outside of the firm, as we've demonstrated here, that it's actually good for society. At the same time, they actually care about the environment as much, in fact, more than those firms without LGBTQ plus directors. And this is the reason why it's very important for us to be aware that the benefits transcend not only into the business case, but also in society in general. And finally, I think the main important aspect that we would like to highlight here is that it's not only about appointing these individuals there, but also allowing them to become visible on the top of organizations, because of course, it's good that we have them there, but then again, it's different also if they're going to be known to the public. Of course, we need to be careful about this also, because the LGBTQ plus identity is something that is a personal choice for individuals, whether they're willing to disclose it or not. But then again, of course, in many cases, we had some interviews with some of the members of the community, and they were actually more inclined to disclose this specific identity, because they are more willing to provide an opportunity for other people to capture that there is life just being part of this community. And I think this is the power of this paper, for us to be able to demonstrate that that it's true, it's good for organizations, but then again, it transcends beyond organizations when it comes to becoming a visible LGBTQ plus director in large firms.